Good evening, everyone, to the Finance Committee meeting for June 23rd, 2020. The first item in the agenda is called to the order to this meeting, and we have quorum. Next is the approval of the minutes from the June 8th, 2020 CIP presentation.
Motion to approve?
All those in favor of approving say aye.
Aye.
Nays? The motion carries. Next is I need a motion to approve the draft of the minutes for the June 9, 2020 Finance Committee meeting.
Motion to approve.
All those in favor of approving say aye.
Aye.
Nays? The motion carries. Next is the public appearance for no agenda item. It seems that we don't have anyone on the room, so we move to the next item is the Finance Director report, and Misty Dodge, she's going to present with the finance report for May, isn't it? Yes.
Yep, so the May Treasurer's Report was included in the packet. The big thing that's different is we finally don't have any of those securities from our old investment provider anymore. And then we're continuing to have CDs that are getting called that we're reinvesting, but for a much lower rate than what we had been getting due to COVID, as we expected. So all that information is in there, unless you guys have questions on it.
I do have a question, Misty.
Sure.
If they're coming due and they're at a lower rate, what do we do then as an alternative as far as an investment? I mean, there must be some limits, or I don't know, maybe you could explain that to me.
Yep, so we generally look at CDs in 3-year CDs. And then, so when the 3 years is up, there's been some that have matured, and then we reinvest it for another 3 years.
Mm-hmm.
And the rates are just lower. So we're continuing to invest in CDs. That's kind of that ladder approach. So sometimes the market will be great and we'll have high stuff. Sometimes the market will be low like now and we'll have low stuff. But as long as we keep on that ladder, it'll even itself out.
So as a municipality, our options are always CDs and we have no other options, or we shouldn't take any other options.
Yeah, so we have some other options. CDs just tends to be the one that we do the most. So in a municipality, we don't want to take risks from that. So we care most about safety first. We don't want to lose money on our investments. It's just not worth the risk. So it's safety, liquidity, making sure that we have the money that we need to pay the bills, and then we care about yield. So other companies might care first about yield and making sure, that they get that higher interest rate and are willing to take that greater risk.
Sure.
As a municipality, we don't. We care first about safety with yield being last.
Good philosophy. Thank you. Mm-hmm.
Misty, can you explain what is in the, you have one called Local Government Investment Pool, LGIP 1 and 9, what are those?
Yep, so LGIP is an investment pool that's administered by the state. So they have a lot more diversity there, and they are taking a little bit more risky investment sometimes, but they have, billions of dollars that they're investing. So their diversity offsets that piece of it. So we have a relatively small piece in their overall pool, but the state then takes care of all of that investment part.
But those one there, they say $36 million, this belongs to the city?
Yep, that's our money that's invested at the pool.
Okay.
But they invest, a lot of municipalities are invested in the pool, but it's all of the state's money that is invested there also.
Any other question regarding the report?
Not this particular section, but further down I do.
So we are done with the report?
Are we talking about the entire Treasurer's report?
Yeah.
No, I have additional questions.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Misty, this refers down to page 9, the City of Fitchburg General Fund. In my mind, it's kind of a profit and loss, but speaking to the revenue side, the intergovernmental revenues of $2,838,710, I see a variance of 34.2%, and you do have a note 3. Just from your experience, do you feel that we're on target with the intergovernmental revenues?
Yeah, so most of those are set at budget time. With COVID, we have a little bit of a unique situation where the state could come back and say that they are going to claw back some of that aid that they've promised us. But at this point, everything I'm hearing, including a call I was on just this afternoon, it doesn't seem like they intend to claw back our aid for 2020. That being said, 2021 might be a different picture. But for 2021, I will bet that we will hit that. It's just a matter of the timing of the payments that we get from the state primarily.
Okay, and can you just define that a little bit more for me? I mean, the intergovernmental revenues, exactly what is intergovernmental revenues?
Yep, so those are money that we get from other governments. So the biggest pieces of it is general transportation aid that we get from the state, shared revenue that we get from the state. There's a Beat Patrol grant in there for $121,000. That's to pay for 2 police officers, which was a grant from the state. Anytime we get a grant from the county, that will be in there. There's some federal money in there too. But basically, it's aid or grants from another government.
Okay, all right. And I have one additional question in the revenue section. What is miscellaneous charges?
So most of what's in there is interest revenue.
Okay.
Trying to think what else is in there. But that's by far the biggest piece.
Okay, all right, very good, thank you.
Do you have any other question, Randy?
No, I do not, not on the treasurer's report, thank you.
Gabriela?
Yeah, I do have one, if we're this far ahead. Page 21 of the packet.
Is that of just the treasurer's report or of the packet?
Of the packet. It's page 15 of the treasurer's report.
Excellent. Okay.
Does that help? Okay. I was looking at the very bottom, the fines, forfeits, and penalties. If you could talk a little bit more about that revenue source and what that typically looks like in the...
Absolutely. So this is the court penalties and fines. So when we issue a municipal citation and they go through the city's municipal court, and then those tickets or citations are paid back, our court collects all of that money. And then there's a piece of it that we have to pay to the county and to the state. So you may have seen the pre-approvals that we've done in some of the other payments where we send the state and county share to them. So this is the net amount, but there will be a bit of a timing difference. So we collect everything in 1 month. We wouldn't send the county and state share until the following month. So there's a little bit of nuance throughout the year that gets cleaned up at the end of the year. Couple of other things to note on this one, we get a lot of payments for our collections in the March and April timeline. One of our biggest collection methods is the TRIP program, the Tax Refund Interception Program, something like that, which is basically if a person that owes the city a citation has a Wisconsin refund, income tax refund coming, it will get diverted to pay off their court fees and fines and forfeitures. So we'll have a bit of a spike at the beginning of the year. With COVID and the delay in the tax filing, I'm not sure exactly how that's going to play out because the timing was just different. So we might see an effect there. The other thing we'll actually see there is the number of tickets has been going down quite a bit. So the past several years, the trend for that revenue source has been decreasing. And then also with COVID and everything else that's happening, the ticket count is down there as well. So that's one of our revenue sources that is susceptible to not hitting budget for this year.
Does it tend to be consistent from year to year, like in general, or is it seems like it would always be kind of a revenue source that was unpredictable?
It's very unpredictable. So it's one of the few that we have actually that's unpredictable. And if there's always that time lag. So if a ticket is issued in 1 year, by the time it gets through the entire process, it'll be a year or sometimes 2 years later before we actually see the cash paying off the ticket. So it is susceptible to kind of that uncertainty. We've also, there's blips in there. So we transitioned to the state for our collection efforts. So they were relatively successful. We're able to collect on some stuff our previous collection agency wasn't able to a couple years back. So we had an artificial spike a couple years ago too that is now kind of leveling itself off.
And then I guess, so in terms of budgeting, like where do we budget that money towards a particular fund, or is that going to the general fund, or how do we use those funds?
Yep, so it's just part of the general fund.
Okay. Great.
And so the municipal court and the police department are also, and the legal team and all that are also part of the general fund, but there's not a one-to-one relationship there by any means. It's just an offset to everything else.
Thank you.
You
I have one additional.
Okay, we have another question.
On that same subject, when you're budgeting, is that based on historical, or do you base it on the tickets that are issued that year, even though you may collect the following year?
We tend to look at trends in there and then account for as much as we can those anomaly years when we know that something was a little bit unusual.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Yep.
Any other question? No? Okay. So we move to the next one.
So I have other things under my report.
Oh, okay,
if I may.
sorry.
So there's been 2 other developments on the COVID side. So it's not time to give you a new report, but I thought these were 2 things you'd want to hear about sooner than that. One is the PSC had previously waived interest and penalty for a period of time during COVID. They have now declared that moratorium to be over as of July 15th. So we have some questions out to the PSC just from a logistics standpoint, because we are a quarterly biller and that timeline doesn't match up especially well with our process. So we have some kind of logistic mechanical questions to figure out. But the piece I wanted to mention to you guys is that interest and penalty will no longer be waived in the next month. And then the CARES Act funding. I know I've talked to you guys a lot about how the state restricted us quite a bit on what would be eligible to get reimbursed for that CARES Act funding. The Department of Revenue released some program guidance Friday afternoon, and kudos to the League of Wisconsin Municipalities for really advocating on our behalf and on behalf of all the other municipalities. They really opened up the requirements and what is eligible to be more in line with what the federal requirements and eligibility is. There's a couple of things that they still aren't allowing us to do that the feds would have, but overall, much more likely that we will actually be able to use that funding to help address our response to COVID. So that was some really good news. A couple other things. One, the CIP is moving along. So tomorrow we have the Committee of the Whole, where Ellers will be here to talk about our financial management plan. That is looking at the mayor's proposed CIP, and if this is adopted as is, which we know amendments still have to happen, but based on just this picture in time, it'll talk about what our debt rates will be, whether or not we hit our financial policies, what the tax rate will be, et cetera. So they'll be there to talk about that tomorrow. We don't talk about specific projects, so we won't get into discussion about should we do this project or should we not do this project, that type of a thing. It's strictly a moment in time on that proposal, what the financial picture would look like. And then one last thing I wanted to mention. So we wrapped up the audit. Every year we look at whether or not we should file or be eligible for a water rate increase under PSC rules. Technically, we are eligible for a water rate case, for a simplified rate case. My assumption at this point is that now is not the time to increase rates on that. So we will keep an eye on it and look at it possibly next year. But I don't think that that's something that we would want to pursue considering everything else that's going on. Mm-hmm. That is all I have for my report.
Misty, I have a question. So tomorrow in the agenda for the Common Council, we have a presentation, TID process and procedure. Who is going to be doing that presentation? Ellers?
No, Pat Marsh is doing it.
Oh.
But I believe he got some materials from Ellers as the support.
Oh, this is the material that he sent to us. He's going to use those in this meeting. Okay.
I'm not sure. Possibly.
Okay. Okay, now I want to be sure. Okay. Tomorrow is... Oh, no. Okay. So I'm confused. Okay. It's tonight. Oh, it's so... Okay. So, any other question for Misty? Oh, can you send us the link from the Wisconsin Department of Revenue for that? You say that they for the CARES Act expenses that they are more eligible.
Yep. So it's the Department of Administration that put out program guidance.
Okay.
Yep. I can send that link out. No problem.
Okay. So, okay. Oh, sorry. So next we are moving to the review of the bills, and then we are going to review the detail of review or check for $10,000 and above, dated June 1st to June 15, 2020, totaling $460,550 with 84 cents. So do you have any question?
I have a question.
Okay.
Under the Dane County Treasurer line item, where it says exempt there, I'm curious about that notation.
Yeah, so that is a pass-through fee. So we collect fees from our residents for the dog licenses, and then we're required to pass on a piece of it to the county. So we wouldn't do a pre-approval or bids or quotes or any of that stuff. We just collect it and have to pass it on.
Got it.
Do we get any money for our dog park from the Dane County, from money from this type of revenue, or no?
So we continue to retain a portion of that dog license. I can't, of course, remember how much it is, but it's a very small amount compared to what the whole license is. That amount is still the same. At one point when the dog park, we were talking about it, there was the opportunity possibly to get additional fees from the county, but our dog park was not the size needed in order to be eligible to be a county dog park. So we didn't get any extra money there. The other theory is that with our dog park, maybe people would be more inclined to license their dogs as opposed to not licensing them. So I haven't looked at that as far as if we saw an increase in our licenses, but in theory, that could make sense. But we actually get to keep such a small portion of it, it wouldn't be very material.
Any other question? Okay, so next we move to the detailed review of all check issued, check number 120897-120929, dated June 1st through June 15, 2020, totaling $518,639 with 77 cents. Do I have a question, any comments?
None from me.
No? No? Okay. So next we move to the next batch, is the detailed review of P-card transaction for $10,000 and above for the cycle ending May 6, 2020, totaling $113,152 with 73 cents. Do you have any question? So do you know what is the P-card transaction, first of all? Okay.
I think so, yeah.
Okay. I want to be sure.
The one question for me, on page 53 of the packet, the Fitchburg Star payments, I assume those are ads in the Fitchburg Star. How can I find out what those ads are used for? Is that something I would ask Pat?
So it's usually a one-page ad towards the back of the Fitchburg Star. So it's the one that kind of has that colored border on it. Usually they talk about, rec programs that are coming up. The CIP public hearing, I believe, was in it this time. So Lisa Sanford in the mayor's office is the one that accumulates all that information from departments and then puts together that one-page ad, and then it runs.
Great, thanks.
Have another question.
Well, it is a question. I'm sorry, are we on C or are we on B? Did you B in?
We are in C.
We are C. Can I back up or am I not allowed to do that?
We are in C.
Go ahead.
Yeah.
Okay, all right.
In the same cycle, yeah.
Yeah, I have a question on the dredging Seminole Glen Kettle, $4,171. Is that, and maybe you can't answer this, do you know what that charge was for? Is it actual dredging work? Is it a study? I was under the impression from last week that project was on hold or was not moving forward. And I could be wrong, but I'm just wondering if there was some clarification. Do you know offhand?
Yeah, I'll have to check in with that one. The one thing I'll say is it's charged to a professional services account, and AECom is an engineering firm. So my guess is that it's for like specifications and things like that and not the actual dredging. But I'll confirm that and get back to you guys.
Okay, very good. And then also jumping down to stormwater municipal group fee. What is that?
In which page you are?
Well, I'm going to say it's the last page. It's the last entry. I don't know if those are.
Oh, stormwater municipal group fee?
Correct, yes.
Yeah, so it's an annual permit essentially that we have to pay to the DNR.
That's what I thought. Okay, thank you. Mm-hmm. That's all the questions. I'm sorry for missing that.
Gabriela, do you have a question?
No.
Okay, so next we are reviewing the Picker transaction for the cycle ending May 6, 2020 for $236,000, 735 with 22 cents. So I think this one is the one that we review. No. Any question there?
No questions.
No question, okay. Thank you. So next, I need a motion to approve resolution R-111-20, approval of Supranet fiber license agreement.
Will we have discussion?
I need a second, someone.
We need a motion first.
Motion.
All right, motion. I just want to make certain.
Yeah.
Motion to approve.
Okay, so,
So would you like me to speak on this one,
yeah,
Leah? So this is basically a forward-looking project. So we have conduit along Fish Hatchery Road between Greenway Cross and north of McKee. And right now, we have no needs to use kind of our end of the deal, but it's looking forward, maybe we will have a use for it. So the company is actually asking to use our conduit for some fiber that they would like to put into our conduit. The benefit to us then is that we have access to some of that they're putting in. So while we currently don't have any plans to use or need fiber along Fish Hatchery Road, in the future, if we do have a need for that, it'll be significantly more cost effective for us to use that rather than having to pay for it. And we had a similar relationship with Win, was another company that did something similar. Years ago, we had that arrangement. And then recently, especially with the new fire stations, we benefited from having that already available to us and saved us literally hundreds of thousands of dollars by having access to that without having to do it ourselves. So there's no cost to it, but it is possibly a financial benefit to us in the future.
okay,
I have questions.
okay.
The question I have is this existing conduit? It's an existing underground conduit package? And we're not placing new conduit for the road construction project for other reasons.
Right. So I don't know if it's a replacement conduit or if it's existing conduit. That part I'm not sure. Sometimes when we put in the new roads, we will replace the conduit that's there. But it's something that we're doing regardless. So whether or not we have this arrangement, we will be putting the conduit in either way.
Okay, so if we put in replacement,
So Bill is here.
why would we put in replacement if we're not utilizing it?
Come, Bill.
Or, my concern is conduit is very expensive, and I just want to make sure we're getting the biggest bang for our buck on conduit. I mean, I have an experience with conduit. I'm not going to go into all that, but I do. To even go into it a little bit further, Supranet we are not utilizing their services, correct?
Supranet services, no, not at this point, but they just want access to conduit that we already have.
Okay, and you do realize 12 fibers is very, very little in today's world.
I'm actually not aware, no. I can
Okay.
follow up though and get the IT director to answer some additional questions.
Okay, I'm sure the IT will have some experience with.
But we have Bill Balky. Maybe you have some answer here.
You timed that just right, Bill.
Yeah, I was just walking by.
There you go. Hi, Bill, thank you.
Yeah. Maybe he heard us talking about this and said, oh, maybe I should stay
Yeah,
here.
my question, Bill, is the conduit for Supranet, is this existing conduit? Are we placing new conduit? I mean, it's a pretty good stretch. There must be an expense to it if we're placing new. And I'm just wondering if we're getting the biggest bang for our buck, if we're going to let them utilize our conduit. I mean, can you give me a little bit of information on that, or maybe you're not familiar with that portion of the project?
Sure. Yeah, we designed in some new conduits to replace an existing conduit. There was one out there for our traffic signals that we have along Fish Hatchery Road. At that time, we installed 2 additional conduits just because, and they're empty for that purpose. So one of the conduits, Supranet, came to us and asked if they could use that instead of pouring in a new conduit run for themselves. And Matt the IT director, had gone through and negotiated a contract with them to utilize the fiber optic cable that they would pull through, or several strands of it, so that we could utilize that.
Do you know the size of the conduit offhand? I mean, is this a 2-inch or a 4-inch or 6-inch or?
It's a 3-inch conduit. It's either 2 3-inch conduits or 3 2-inch conduits. I'm not.
So let's just say we needed to, well, from your experience, I'm guessing you're placing 2, one for a new service and maybe the second one would be for a replacement if that first, if there's a breakdown in the first conduit. I mean, I don't know, I just have some concerns that we may be utilizing that second conduit. We may be exhausting that second conduit and never get any use out of it going forward. And maybe we don't need any use, but I would think we'd have a use if we were placing it, if we were paying those dollars. Because that's a pretty good sized run. That conduit must have some dollars associated with it.
Yes.
Yeah. I don't know. Misty, maybe you can get back to me on some of those other questions. And the size of fiber, I mean, 12 fibers just doesn't seem, in today's world, does not seem like we may gain anything from going forward. But I don't know. I don't know what the city's infrastructure, how much fiber, maybe another vendor places it for us if we need it. So.
And
If you could
would
ask
you like me
Matt.
to have Matt Pro reach out to you? Is
If
that
you
the
would,
easiest
please.
way to get your questions answered? Because I'm not a conduit person, so I'm a little out of my realm.
And just one other additional question. When we place the conduit for traffic lights, it's not just the intersection and around. Does it go back to another source?
Yeah, it connects up to the city of Madison's traffic signal system
it
up
does.
at the belt line, so we're connecting into that.
So is it a fiber that goes back, or is it just a strictly riding on copper?
It's fiber going back.
Okay, today's world is fiber. Very good. Okay. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Any other question, comment? So all those in favor of
So
this?
are we going to wait on a vote until, Randy, do you not want to vote on it until you get your answers? Or, because I'm just curious, is this something we would want to table, or? I'm not clear if there's a tighter timeline on
I think
this.
there's a timeline of, is it July 1st or something like that?
I imagine that there's a timetable, isn't it? Because
Yeah.
they're
I just wish we'd have a little bit more time on something like this, but I'm not going to hold up this project. I mean, I have confidence in our city staff, and I'm sure they're making the right decisions. I just had questions in my mind to that I wanted to clear up, that's all. So go ahead.
So all of these in favor of resolution R-111-20, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Nays, the motion carry. So next I need a motion for resolution R-118-20, a resolution combining words for the August 11, 2020 partisan primary election in the city of Fitchburg.
Motion to approve?
Okay. Any discussion?
Yeah, I'm curious. Tracy, thanks for joining us. I just saw you pop up.
Good evening.
I'm curious if you could dive a little bit into the cost analysis on page 81 of the packet, and maybe Misty can do too. Either one of you could speak to it, but just I'm trying to understand if this is like, it seems like this is getting at what the actual cost savings is, but it doesn't like go ahead and say it straight up. So I'm curious what the cost savings is actually going to be.
Well, actually, to be honest, Gabriella, there's been some developments that have come forward since this resolution was first brought forward. And staff is basically recommending to table this indefinitely to stick with the 4 polling locations. At the time that this resolution was drafted, we only had 44 people that were coming forward willing to work the polls. And based on this and additional factors like the council having to approve the combined polling locations 30 days prior to the election and not having that first scheduled meeting in July, if combined locations were going to be approved, we knew it would have to be acted on by at least the June 23rd meeting. And we didn't feel it was right to put the resolution of this nature on the agenda as a direct referral, so we opted to place it on the June 9th consent agenda. That way, everybody was kind of aware that this issue was going on and needed to be addressed. So since the time this resolution was drafted, the clerk staff has been doing a lot of reach outs to past election inspectors. Sarah and Amy in our Human Resources Department have been promoting our online employment application for election inspectors on our city website. Jeremy and the FACT TV staff have been advertising the need for election workers on their show. Lisa has been sending out information on our social media platforms. And for those of you council members, you've been helping out by reaching out to your constituents, making them aware of this issue. So many more people have come forward that are willing to work the polls for this election. We're now up to 68 people, which is, and those numbers are continuing to grow as word gets out. So thank you to everybody that's been involved in this process from the beginning. And may I say, if you're watching this and you're interested in becoming an election inspector, please reach out to the clerk's office. We'd love to have you. We can't do elections without you. So I've done some crunching of numbers for how many election inspectors we would need to staff our locations. 85 people would be ideal, but we could easily do it with 77. And as the absentee ballot requests continue to rise, which we are now at 4,142, the less people that we would actually need to staff those check-in stations, because it'd be basically more of processing the absentee ballots at those polling locations. That, and in addition, because of this type of election and the timing of the printing of the ballots, combining the locations now would prove to be more difficult based on the fact that if the proper ballot needs to be placed in the proper DS200 machine, and that would require a complete separation of locations within that combined building and or room. So basically, if we combined, let's say, 2 locations into one building, we would still have to run it as 2 separate polling locations within that room. And that can prove to be a little bit more difficult than it seems, just based on that particular ballot style needing to go in the proper ballot machine, if that makes sense. So, we'd prefer to have all locations up and running, no matter what the election. We always like to have all of our locations up and running. Plus, this will help with social distancing and not creating that voter confusion on election day of, okay, where do I go? I didn't get that notice. I come to the poll where I normally vote. There's a sign up there that says, no, I don't vote here. I got to go somewhere else. We're trying to avoid that completely. And it seems like bringing this resolution forward at the time when we didn't have enough staff has really helped bring out that fact that we need election inspectors. So, and they're coming forward. So thank you.
Who wants to speak? Okay, Gabriela.
I have a quick question. So how many poll workers do you need to staff a single polling location?
On a normal election without the COVID, where most people vote in person, we prefer to have at least 32 people. And the reason that number seems so high is we split the day into 2 shifts. Okay. So we have about 10 to 11 people in the morning that work from 6:30 to 1:30, and then we have that second shift that comes in from 1:30 to 9:30 when all the closing duties are done after the polls close at 8. So, but that's a normal election when more people are coming in person to vote.
We don't provide. So the August election is staffed at the same level as like a November election, or do you up it in the November elections, presidential election years, because you assume there'll be more people?
Normally in the August election, we would need less staff than that just because it's not a very high turnout election. November election, whether it's the presidential or the governor's race, we try to up that. And the reason we try to up it is because we like to be able to give those people breaks throughout the morning. If there's any help with directing people, we like to have additional greeters and directors there.
You have another one?
Yeah, I'm also curious, I'm curious if you could point me to where on the website it's being advertised, because it wasn't immediately obvious to me.
If you go, I think HR has, and I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt.
Oh, no, go for it, yeah.
It's under job opening, because I was looking and I couldn't find it until I went to job openings.
It is.
It's there.
Yeah, but it should be under like employment opportunities, like if you were
Yeah.
really gonna apply for a job. for
Okay,
this
job
stage.
openings. And then in terms of poll working recruitment, is there a social media plan around that? Because I was taking a look at the Facebook page and I hadn't seen a post about poll workers since March before the April election. So I'm just curious about what that social media plan looks like.
That is ran by our administrative assistant. She mans all of our social media platforms, and basically periodically she'll just send out that social media blast that, we need election inspectors. I know Jeremy's talked about it on his Fact TV platform, that we need election inspectors. I know some of you have reached out to some of your constituents. Thank you so much. Bless your heart. We've worked with the senior center, and they've been reaching out to people. I think one of them was going to put an advertisement in this senior center newsletter. I've had the League of Women Voters reach out to me, and I've asked them to, if they know of anybody interested in becoming an election inspector, to please reach out to us. Not only are we going to have this issue in August, which is looking much more favorable, but, come November, we're going to need more as well. So if we have these discussions now and do these reach outs now, we can get more people to staff.
And in terms of the job posting, is it just on the website or is also on, like, do we run it on, I can't even remember what the, Indeed or whatever the different job search aggregators on websites?
Indeed is one.
Yeah,
Sure, that
Indeed
would-
or the other types of ZipRecruiter, or do we run the posts on there? Because I know there's sometimes a cost associated with that. Is like a poll workers active, is it an active posting on those different?
To be honest, I don't know if HR runs that on those platforms. I can certainly reach out to them and find out and see if it's possible to do that as well. It's a good idea.
Yeah, it looks like Pat's here now. Do you?
Yeah, it's run on a platform. I don't know what platform, but we can get that information to you. All of our job announcements go out to the same platform. It's also it's been in the Fitchburg Star. It's been, as Tracy noted, it's periodically, Lisa will pop it up on our website, the front page. So we do the same thing with the poll workers as we do for like our seasonal staff.
Okay.
So.
All right, that's all I have for now.
Yeah.
I might ask some more questions at the council.
Randy.
Just the one question, you mentioned as far as the general election that you may need additional poll workers. Educate me on the recent ruling from the Wisconsin Ethics, it's not the Wisconsin Election Commission, as far as absentee ballots. I mean, is that a definite at this point? I mean, absentee ballots being sent out to all registered voters, or?
No, it's not absentee ballots. I think people are a little confused with the wording.
Sure.
It's absentee ballot request application. So as of September 1st, if you do not already have an absentee ballot request on file to receive a ballot by mail for November, you are automatically going to be mailed an application to apply to have a ballot mailed to you. We don't automatically mail ballots out.
Sure.
We can't do that in this state.
Right. Thank you.
Yep.
So I think that this is a good thing that we are taking this out, because I was, totally opposed to combining, words. So what do we need? We need to vote. How do we do with this? We need to remove it from the agenda?
We have a couple of different options. Right now, you have a motion to approve, so you could all just vote no, and then you turn it down. So council would have to do the same thing. Or we could scrap this and go back and postpone it instead. I think it might honestly be easier just to vote it down if that's where you're all headed.
I'm ready to vote.
So am I.
Okay, so all those in favor of resolution R-118-20 say aye. Nay?
Nay.
Nay.
Nay. The motion didn't pass. Okay. So thank you. Thank you, Tracy.
Thanks, Tracy.
Thank you, everyone.
So next is announcement, and next meeting will be June 30, next Monday. No, Tuesday. It's gonna be a special meeting. So I recommend you people in this group to read that material that you received. And if you have question, ask question before the meeting. And then our next regular meeting is gonna be July 28, 2020. So now do you have any other announcement, Misty? No? Okay. All those I need a motion to adjourn the meeting.
Motion to adjourn?
All those in favor of adjourning the meeting, say aye.
Aye.
Nays, the motion carries. So we are adjourning our meeting at 7:12. Thank you very much.